With a 99.4% success rate, Raju Law is one of the largest immigration law firms in the USA. Besides our founder and principal attorney, we have 6 associate attorneys along with 100 law clerks, case managers, and officials. The law firm is headquartered in Washington, D.C. Other than that, there are a branch office in Georgia and a country office in Dhaka, Bangladesh. What is a writ of mandamus? In simpler terms, in the immigration process in the USA, a writ of mandamus is a remedy for visa applicants using which they can effectively address and resolve the unreasonable delay in their visa processing. Why should you file a writ of mandamus? If anyone's visa application is stuck in an administrative process, he or she may file a writ of mandamus requesting the court to ask the concerned embassy or consulate to adjudicate the visa application within a reasonable time. Who can file a writ of mandamus? Anyone can usually proceed with a writ of mandamus if the administrative processing has been ongoing for more than 2 months for a student visa and 6 months or more for a visa of other categories. Processing time. After filing a writ of mandamus, it usually takes around 6 to 8 weeks to get a response from the concerned agency like USCIS, embassies, consulates, or others. For a writ of mandamus and any lawful immigration-related services, contact the address and phone number shown on the screen. You can also mail at info@rajulaw.com. Raju Law is your trustful address for any assistance and advice regarding immigration to America.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this show. Today, we have a special show. We will not take any live question and will not answer it today. However, we will discuss how you can write things for immigration purposes, especially those who have like a science background, those who have like a lot of publication citation, a lot of achievements in their life. However, when you try to apply for immigration or other kind of benefits, sometimes you need to write the same thing in a non-technical language. And sometimes it's very hard for you because you as a scientist, you think it's very easy for everybody to understand, but in real life, it's not that easy. Especially we, the lawyers, we do not have that much scientific knowledge. At the same time, USCIS officers and other people who are working in USCIS, they have very little knowledge about scientific fields. So sometimes many of our clients, they struggle to write their background, write their research summaries and other like a proposed endeavor in a very easy to understand non-technical languages. So today we have our associate attorney and team lead, 𝗟𝗟𝘃 Smith. She is an attorney. She is licensed in Washington, D.C. Most importantly, she has a science background. She had a pre-med undergrad degree. So she's a kind of person who understands both legal requirements for any applications at the same time, especially NIW applications. At the same time, she understands the scientific things, how the people in science field, they think, how they think and how they write their things. So she's a very good person in this field to convert any scientific writing into a non-technical language. So let me invite 𝗟𝗟𝘃 Smith in our show, and I request her to give her like a short introduction about herself, and then start presenting about how to write scientific articles or anything for non-technical audience.
Hi, my name is 𝗟𝗟𝘃. I have been with Raju Law for the last probably six or 7 months. Prior to, I have developed a strong background in scientific studies and have pursued legal careers thereafter. So I am happy to be here this morning, and I look forward to providing some guidance as we work together to create legal documents that reflect scientific clients.
Thank you, 𝗟𝗟𝘃. Samir, can you please show this PowerPoint? Just you can start.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about how to write, translate basically scientific writing into something that your attorney can use to prepare legal documents. Next slide, please. And so just some background, Raju has already talked about this, but scientific literature and specifically individuals who have dedicated a lot of their career to their expertise in the scientific realm, so to say, um, it's very difficult to that it doesn't directly translate into legal documents or easily digestible information. So what we are wanting to do is to provide some tips and tricks, maybe some insight as to how we use the information or how it best translates for us so that we can create documents more easily and more accurately, honestly. Next slide, please. And so clear communication is one of the best ways to accurately convey and represent our clients. So the more that we can understand the specifics of the scientific projects or research or career that is going on, the better we can represent our clients. Next slide, please. So when you're writing or conveying your information to your attorney or just non-scientific people in general, some key steps to follow include knowing your audience. So, if you know that they don't have a strong background, then, adapt. And anyway, so know your audience, relate your research to something that they understand, show the relevance of your research, and don't use too much scientific jargon. Make your writing interesting, use illustrations where you can, and maybe have a non-scientist review your work. Next slide, please. So knowing your audience means that having an understanding of who will be receiving your presentation, your writing, the information that you're providing. And scientific jargon can get in the way of that sometimes because if you're speaking to somebody who just doesn't have any background, it gets lost in translation. Think of a foreign language and the barriers that happen when two different languages are trying to come together. So that's one way that I think about it when I'm explaining it. And just having a strong understanding of your audience will just assure that they get the most out of what you're trying to say. There's a lot of interesting work and a lot of interesting information that can get lost in translation. So knowing your audience, knowing how much they may know going into the reading or reviewing the information plays a big factor. Next slide, please. So if you can relate your research to something that the audience understands, it's going to make it more digestible to them. It's going to make it less overwhelming, and it's going to be something that maybe has a lasting impact. And so we suggest using analogies or metaphors or comparisons. So for example, if you were to say that the cell membrane is a protective structure that surrounds all cells like the walls of a house, it separates the cell's internal and external environments. Therefore, the cell membrane contains proteins which act as gates determining what molecules can and cannot enter the cell. You've taken something very complex and very difficult and turned it into something that people understand. They know what a house is. They know what gates are. They understand internal and external. And it just made something, you don't leave somebody, 3 pages back confused on what cell membrane means. And so you bring them along with you as you go. And that helps when you are able to create a relation to something that is in their everyday life. Next slide, please. So explaining the relevance of your research, that helps people say, why should I care? And it's not that people aren't interested generally, but sometimes people have short attention span. And if you don't keep them engaged throughout the entire writing, it's easy to get confused and miss key factors. So always keep it relevant. And one example of explaining the relevance to your research could look like this. It says, I investigate how proteins and cells misfold. The different structures that proteins have when they fold incorrectly can cause a variety of diseases depending on the protein, including like cystic fibrosis, Peyronie's disease, and Parkinson's disease. Understanding what causes proteins to misfold is a stepping stone to understanding these diseases and developing treatments for them in the future. So you've taken something very complex. I don't know what it means for a protein to fold. How do proteins fold? When I think of protein, I think of maybe the foods I consume. But here we're talking on a molecular level. And instead of it being extremely overwhelming, it gives a purpose. We know what cystic fibrosis generally is. We know what Parkinson's generally is. We hear about these diseases within our community and at different medical researches. So we kind of have an idea that they're illnesses. And having the relevance stated like this helps keep your audience engaged and gives a purpose. Say, hey, this is really interesting. So that is helpful when you're writing for non-scientific people. Next slide, please. So scientific jargon can be inevitable. There's certain things that we just have to use the scientific terminology for. But there's ways to maybe think about things differently so that we can also use lay terms. That way, the research isn't totally feeling like a scientific dictionary for those of us who may have to look up maybe 3 words in one sentence. That is a lot and can get really just hectic and cumbersome so that you spend so much time trying to remember the definitions that you look up that you forget the purpose of the research or what the research even may be. So for example, in the non-scientific person's world, BMI means body mass index, but it can also mean brain-machine interface to a neuroscientist. So if I'm going through an article and I keep seeing BMI that hasn't been defined as brain-machine interface, I'm going to be going through a neurological article thinking, oh my gosh, how does body mass index fit into this neuroscience? If they're talking about different neurological research, why are they talking about BMI, body mass index? So it's just helpful. It's helpful to think about your reader and to consider maybe the knowledge that they may have going into it. If you don't know, chances are, if you're talking to attorneys or if you're talking to people outside of the industry directly, I would assume minimal background knowledge and just keep it. We say about a 12-year-old, if you can speak to a 12-year-old about the subject, think about it that way. And that's not to call people, it's just a lack of experience in that realm. People have dedicated their entire career to their scientific endeavors, and it's just not really realistic to expect the world around you to inherently understand such complexity. So, okay, next slide, please. Using illustrations is one of my favorite ways to loop people in. If I'm reading something and I see a little table, graph, or something, it just helps me conceptualize and visualize what I've just read. And it's not saying that illustration should be overused, but there are times that it's extremely helpful to use a graph or a table. And it sort of breaks up the reading. It also provides the reader a place to check in and say, okay, I did understand that, or wait, this doesn't look anything like what I thought I just read. So illustrations can be a helpful tool if used appropriately. Next slide, please. And this is perhaps one of my most valuable tips that I could offer, is that if you have a non-scientist review your writing, it can go a long way. There's times that, I write things even if I'm trying to break something out and think about it differently, maybe in a non-legal realm. There's times that I find a lot of value in seeking an opinion of somebody who could be part of that audience. So maybe a friend or family member, or just somebody who's not deeply immersed in the field that you're presenting on. They can talk to you about if they get uninterested, if you lose them, if they feel like, hey, I lost relevance from page 2 to 4, and then it took me another 3 paragraphs to get back engaged. That's helpful feedback. It also can let you know if you're utilizing a term that hasn't been properly defined, or maybe it's just way too much to look up. It's really helpful, and they can help you summarize. They can provide a summary that maybe you say, hey, in 2 sentences, what did I say? What is my, what is the conclusion of my research? That feedback is extremely helpful. It lets you know if you've been clear, concise, and if you are going to be misunderstood. So next slide, please. And making your writing interesting can just go a long way. And being straight to the point is one part of that. Instead of like scientific research can often reflect maybe what happened and how you did it, but it doesn't always show like some of the things that as an attorney that we need to know about research is maybe why it motivates you. Why does this project matter in like the economic realm, or why does it matter to the greater good of society, or things like that. There's times that getting your passion through can be really beneficial for helping your attorney or person representing you to maybe have a better understanding of your research. And you may want to leave out details that would lose the attention of your readers. So getting too far deep into your methods is an easy way to lose your reader. Now, in the scientific realm, you really want to expand upon your method, because that's oftentimes what the scientific industry can be very interested in, is your methodology, more so than even the conclusion at times. So think about that. We like to know the methods, but it's often not exactly relevant to, especially the NIW. So just keep that in mind. Simplify maybe where you can, and we like to think about it as maybe an inverted pyramid, and you can begin with the conclusion and say, hey, this is what we found, or this is the main point of my research. This is what I'm trying to do. Think about important details, but don't get too far in the weeds. And then conclude with the background, maybe reminding them of the relevancy or the purpose or the major need that's being met by this research. And so that just ties it back together and creates a nice little package that's very cohesive for a non-scientific person to digest. Next slide, please. And Mr. Mehran, do you have any questions?
No. So, and we're not taking any questions, even though you made a slide for that. That's okay. Thank you very much, Chelsea. And so usually in our live show, we take direct question from clients or prospective clients, and we answer. But when we have this kind of a special show, we do not take any questions. But I really appreciate Chelsea for joining this show today. And for our audiences, if you have any question or concern, you can join our next show next Sunday, or you can email us. And the purpose of this presentation was just for the information purpose. This is not a legal advice, and every people's case is different. So when you translate your scientific writing into non-scientific document for non-scientific audience, either for immigration purpose or anything, I believe this presentation was very helpful for you. And if you have any question, you can always reach out to us. Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you everyone who joined us today.
With a 99.4% success rate, Raju Law is one of the largest immigration law firms in the USA. Besides our founder and principal attorney, we have 6 associate attorneys along with 100 law clerks, case managers, and officials. The law firm is headquartered in Washington, D.C. Other than that, there are a branch office in Georgia and a country office in Dhaka, Bangladesh. What is a writ of mandamus? In simpler terms, in the immigration process in the USA, a writ of mandamus is a remedy for visa applicants using which they can effectively address and resolve the unreasonable delay in their visa processing. Why should you file a writ of mandamus? If anyone's visa application is stuck in an administrative process, he or she may file a writ of mandamus requesting the court to ask the concerned embassy or consulate to adjudicate the visa application within a reasonable time. Who can file a writ of mandamus? Anyone can usually proceed with a writ of mandamus if the administrative processing has been ongoing for more than 2 months for a student visa and 6 months or more for a visa of other categories. Processing time. After filing a writ of mandamus, it usually takes around 6 to 8 weeks to get a response from the concerned agency like USCIS, embassies, consulates, or others. For a writ of mandamus and any lawful immigration-related services, contact the address and phone number shown on the screen. You can also mail at info@rajulaw.com. Rajulaw is your trustful address for any assistance and advice regarding immigration to America.